and welcome. This is Vince of vinceprep.com and Agos, Japan. This is the second in a series of videos that I'm making about how to reapply to business school. One of my favorite phrases I'm from California, the Bay Area. I went to Stanford University undergrad, and I have some friends that work in Silicon Valley, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to drop names. My favorite advice from people in Silicon Valley is fail early and fail often. That advice is hard to translate into some other cultures. I'm making this video in Tokyo, Japan. I've been living in Japan for 12 years. That idea definitely is a hard sell here and elsewhere in Asia, where failure is, where there's a lot of shame associated with failure. The point of life is to avoid failure at all costs. I think that's too extreme. Anyway, I'll stop with the cross-cultural comparisons and get straight to the point. This is a series of videos I'm making about the reapplication process. I think it's great to be a reapplicant. I was a reapplicant when I reapplied to a program that I thought, I was a teacher, classroom teacher, who was interested in content, video particularly, and I wanted to learn how to make contents. Beyond just paper and pen or textbooks. All this new media stuff happening in 1995, 96, 97, I got really excited about the idea of sharing information with a wider audience than just the 30 kids or 20 kids in my classroom. Anyway, I applied to a program at NYU called ITP, Interactive Telecommunications Program. At that time, it was sort of considered to be number 2 behind the Media Lab. Now, some people would argue that ITP has surpassed the MIT Media Lab. Anyway, exciting, dynamic, competitive program. The first time I applied, it didn't work out. I didn't really know my goals. I just had this vague concept about, I'm a classroom teacher, I want to make content. I reapplied, I got in the second time. When I reapplied, I did everything differently. I talked to more people. I reflected a lot more about my past, my future, how the school would help me get there. Kind of funny, and in the end, I got into ITP, but I didn't go there. I went to an education program for reasons I won't explain in this video. But in the end, I had the option to go to the school that had been my dream school at the beginning of the process. So I think I've been a reapplicant. I know what it tastes, what it feels like to taste that failure, and also if you take that as a learning opportunity, you can really grow from the experience. So in my previous video, I sort of outlined the 3 core questions that one should ask oneself after being denied from every school you applied to, or at least the only school that you would actually attend. Those schools deny you. Maybe a safe school admits you, but you don't want safe. You want to only go to grad school once. So this video is digging more deeply into this idea within the timing issue. Timing has a lot of aspects. Today's video is about career progress. I'm going to share an example of a client of mine who applied to Stanford GSB in round 2 and then was waitlisted. So that's a good start, right? It's easier to reapply to a school that waitlisted you than a school that just straight denied you, because the school is showing interest. They're saying, okay, we like you just enough to consider you, but we didn't like you just enough to, give you a seat instead of someone else. Somebody else beat you this time. It doesn't really work like that, but more or less that's the message you're getting. It's like, come back to us later. That's what a wait list means. We want to watch what happens and see if a spot opens up, you might get it. If not, come back early. Stanford, unlike Tuck or some other schools, doesn't actually offer a feedback session. So they didn't tell him where his area of weaknesses were, but we knew it wasn't his scores. GMAT was fine, competitive in the range, 700 something. TOEFL was good. GPA was fine, good university, competitive enough major at that university. So the numbers were all there. And also he's waitlisted, so it's kind of like you're done with the numbers. Someone like that doesn't need to take another GMAT because the school waitlisted you with your current score, so there's no academic area of weakness. One can't. It's not easy to think that it's an issue of the numbers. It's probably an area of showing enough leadership potential. So Stanford, whose mission is to train global leaders to whatever it is, change organizations, change the world, something, change. He didn't show enough potential to change his organization, for example. So here's what he did. He wasn't going to get a promotion. Promotion was not on the table. Promotion was not an option at this company in the next 6 months or so between the round 2 waitlist result and the round 1 reapplication. So instead of waiting for someone to promote him, waiting for someone else to stamp him and show that he's good, he took action. What he did was he started a kind of unofficial team whereby he gathered up some junior members in his line, right, sitting in his line of desks. That's how offices are organized here in Japan. There's no cubicles. It's all like you're in a line, right? It's very, very literal with the head of your line at the head of the table. Anyway, he had some juniors there on his line, some junior guys, some junior colleagues. I think they were guys, I don't know, maybe women. He got them involved, and then here's the clever part. He also enlisted or recruited a couple of people who he was friendly with, a couple, again, slightly people a bit younger than him, working in other teams, focusing on other sectors, right? This is private equity, so they have coverage areas, they have areas of expertise. Somebody's really deep into operations, someone else is really deep into, the numbers, somebody else really has a sense of like what's happening in certain market sectors. So he got these guys together, like after hours or before or over drinks, and he created an atmosphere where these guys felt important. He asked good questions, and most importantly, he listened to their answers. He solicited their areas of expertise. And then he was just like a conductor, right? Asking questions, getting information, trying to match up this idea and that idea. And over a period of months, they came up with a couple of great investment hypotheses, right? They identified a couple of target companies that could be good acquisitions for buyouts, or M&A or something, where they were going to use their significant pool of capital to find a company that they could get something out of or match with another company to get something else out of, right? That's what these guys do. So this cross-functional team and different sector people and different function people came up with a few ideas. They presented those ideas to the senior managers. They got a green light to go ahead with a couple of them. And here's the best part. He was super lucky that right before the deadline, they had a success. So right before the round 1 deadline of Stanford, one of these several deals that they pursued moved forward in a significant way. And it looked like it was going to be one of the biggest deals of his career. But most importantly, and again, this is really important for Stanford, as I've said in my Stanford video about the Stanford essays, it's not just about the result for Stanford, especially it's about the process. This is a school that emphasizes organizational behavior. So he showed organizational intelligence, right? Getting the right people, asking the right questions, facilitating the process, making people feel important, raising the level of the junior guys, motivating them, right? So that when he goes off to hopefully Stanford Business School for his 2-year MBA experience, those junior guys are empowered and inspired to step up and fill in, move into his chair, if you will, and take over where he left off and make things even better. So he emphasized this story in his essay as like an update. Here's what I've been doing since I applied last time. I've shown leadership at work. Here's the example. He told the story as well in the interview because Stanford interviews are blind. The interviewer for Stanford only had his resume, so the interviewer didn't know. The interviewer didn't know he was a reapplicant, or he didn't bring that up. But my point was he used this as a core leadership story whenever he could. And here's my final tip. When you're talking about examples, and this relates to behavioral interviews, I have a whole separate series of videos that I'm updating as often as I can about behavioral interviews. It's one of the most popular, it is still the most popular post over at vinceprep.com, behavioral interviews. And these are also my most popular videos. So thanks for watching. I assume there's a lot of interest out there for behavioral interviews because it not only relates to getting into business school, but in a much wider market, it relates to getting a job, right? Increasingly, job interviews using behavioral interviews. Anyway, when it comes to telling a behavioral interview story, or just telling a story about something real that happened, in other words, in the past, as opposed to a hypothetical story about something that might happen in the future, right? Some real things that happened in the past. That's a behavioral question. So tell me about a time when you led a team that exceeded expectations, or tell me about a time when you identified an opportunity to improve your organization, or tell me about a time when you had a success, whatever the question is, right? It's fine to structure your story as situation, task, action, result, right? STAR, S-T-A-R, situation, task, action, results, result, and maybe even, learning what you learned at the end. That's all fine and good. But it's actually not a very natural way to tell stories. It's a very structured way, and it's a very good way to practice, as long as you're pausing in between each part of the story rather than a 5-minute monologue, right? Anyway, it's a good way to structure, it's a good way to practice, it's a good way to, in a sense, memorize and identify each part of it so that you can get past memorization and tell a natural story. But it's really not enough. What makes a behavioral interview an A or A+ answer, I feel, is this. Actually identifying what the message is you're trying to tell, summarizing the story and telling us directly what it means. So let me use his example again. He's lucky in many ways. He grew up in 2 different countries. He's familiar with 2 different cultures. That was hard at times to integrate very different basically, country in Asia and a country in the West, Western country. He had to integrate different ways of thinking, different ways of communicating, different ways of seeing the world, etc. Very different ways. Wasn't always easy. He struggled a bit, but finally he figured out a way to come to terms with who he is and what he wants to do, and to be successful in either context or either situation. Now his company is very domestic, monoculture, one group of people, one language. So he wasn't using his cross-cultural, bilingualism, or he wasn't coordinating, for example, Americans and Japanese, right? Or anything like that. So it wasn't a literal use of his background. But here's the thing. He identified the fact that he's highly flexible, and that he's highly basically good at bridging different worlds. So in this case, he's got a guy who's an expert on the IT sector or telecommunications, and he's got another guy who's really an expert on something else. I don't know, logistics. I'm just making this up, right? So he has these 2 guys in his team, guys or girls, people, who have different areas of expertise, and what he's actually good at is, again, sort of coordinating or facilitating or conducting those interests by asking questions and bringing out that information. And he can see the connections that these guys can't see, and he's suggesting the matchups, or he's identifying, sort of playing matchmaker, if you will, in his team. Okay, now you guys go off and talk about that and come back to me in a week with some suggestions for this, and then you guys go talk about that, or, also not just keeping things central to him, but also knowing when to relax and let people just continue communication once he raises the excitement level. So he identified that. So it sounds like this. Because I have this background growing up in 2 different cultures, my mind works in some unusual ways. I'm able to see connections that others don't see, and I'm able to bring things together in ways that maybe others don't think about. So I used that skill when I had this cross-functional, or when I made this working group in my company, where I brought in a couple of junior people from my line, my team, and then a couple junior people from another team. And we had these meetings, and we identified some investment opportunities because we had different areas of expertise. I was the questioner, I was the facilitator, I was the conductor, and I was also the sort of bridge to connect these ideas. And then we came up with a couple of concrete proposals, several of which were approved by management. We went forward with a few of these ideals, and luckily for me, timing worked out. Right before I applied to school, this was actually the biggest deal of my career, was closed. But more than the result, I'm really proud of the process, the way that I brought these guys together, by using that skill that I have to see connections that others don't see, by being a bridge between cultures or types of people or ways of thinking. All right, this has gone a bit long. I appreciate your patience. Stay tuned for more updates. I make these videos whenever I can. It's really It's my favorite thing to do, is to share information. I appreciate your time and attention. Please subscribe for the latest updates. You'll get an automated alert from YouTube when I've uploaded a new video. Thanks for your time, and best of luck with your applications. Bye for now.